so that you guys have ample time to ask questions and the vet students have ample time to give answers. So first, we're going to have everyone who's presenting go around, say their names, their undergraduate institution and their major, and also what type of interview they took. So if you were in the CASPer or the MMI cohort. And yeah, and then we'll start with the CASPer cohort and they'll Oh.
Yeah, the last bit was muted. You want to do that again?
Someone keeps muting me. I don't know why that's happening. To whoever is doing that, please do not. Also, if everyone could, besides the vet students, could turn off their mics and cameras, that would be great. And just to let everybody know, by being in this meeting, you are agreeing to being recorded. So keep that in mind. And yeah, so sorry, the last part of what I said was just that we would start with the CASPer cohort and then we would move into the MMIs to have them tell you a little bit about their experience. So can all the vet students please turn on your cameras and mics and go around, introduce yourself?
Maybe let's start with the phase 2s and then do the phase 1s.
Sounds good, yeah.
Okay, I am Keisha Harris. I'm a phase 2 at OVC. And before going to OVC, my major was zoology at UBC. Originally, I had a special interest in zoo medicine. That's like now up in the air after being here for 2 years. And my favorite animal, I would say, is the gibbon.
All right, I guess I'm going next, or? Okay. Tu, I think you're muted still.
Yes, please, Cami, could you go next?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Camille, and I'm a phase 2 student. And my undergrad was at University of Guelph, and I studied animal biology. I'm from Woodbridge, Ontario. Lived there for a few years, but I was born in Lima, Peru. Fun fact about me.
All right, let's have Annie go next.
Hi, I'm Annie. I did my undergrad at the University of Guelph in animal biology as well. As far as a fact, just my favorite animal is super basic, probably just a dog.
All right, let's have Maria go next.
Hi, everyone. My name's Maria Papapetru. I did my undergrad at the University of Guelph. I completed a 3-year degree in animal biology. My veterinary special interest is I'd love to be a pathologist, so I'll do my PhD after veterinary school, and then I want to work for the CFIA in food animal production, and my favorite animal is definitely a sheep.
Awesome. We can have Sarah go next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Belair. I finished 3 years in animal bio at the University of Guelph, and I'm looking at possibly going into mixed animal practice.
Awesome. And then let's finish off with Samantha.
All right, I guess she maybe couldn't make it. So if we want to have maybe the MMI people turn off their mics and cameras for now, and just the CASPer people stay. And then just starting with, let's start with Sarah. Do you maybe just want to give a little bit of a brief summary of your experience?
Yeah, sure. Overall, it was a pretty good experience. The preparation for it, I only started preparing, I think we had 3 weeks after we found out, so I didn't prepare for quite a long time. I didn't have a job during that time, so I did spend roughly 2 to 3 hours a day preparing. So I did have, that was pretty helpful with that. So preparing for the CASPer, I actually did a CASPer prep course, which was pretty helpful to me, in my opinion. The main benefit of that was that they gave you kind of 5 mock CASPer exams, and they had it in a scenario that was similar to the actual CASPer. So it allowed me to take those CASPer tests in the exact same scenario and get used to it. So on the day that the actual CASPer came, and I wasn't as nervous for it. Other than that, preparing for it, another thing that I did was I would scroll through newspaper or news and trying to find a crisis kind of moment. And then I would pause that and give myself an allotted 5 minutes to try and answer that crisis. This allowed me to kind of practice my critical thinking skills and allowed me to kind of think quick on my feet and kind of get in that mind frame. And that was really helpful for the day of. When it came to coming up with some personal stories for the CASPer, I found it quite difficult in the moment. Thinking quick on your feet when you only have 5 minutes for 3 of the questions. So something that I did was, if you go to the CASPer website, in the About CASPer section, it lists 9 to 12 characteristics that they test for. And then for every one of those characteristics, I thought of a moment in my life where I displayed that or where I did not display that and how I learned from those moments. So I had those kind of experiences in the back of my head, and it allowed me to answer those type of questions a lot easier. And then in preparing for the panel interview, before I started with that, I sat down and I made a list of all of the important characteristics I thought that a professional needed to have, someone who was working with animals needed to have, and a veterinarian needed to have. And then I went and I looked through my references and my resume and all my volunteer experiences, and I reflected and looked back and tried to see how those experiences would allow me to improve upon on these characteristics, or how they may have for the positives and negatives of those experiences. And I wrote them all out and tried to be as elaborate as I could. After that, I started practicing. I had everyone ask me questions. The one thing that I did that I felt actually was very valuable, made sure to, when people were testing me or doing the interviews with me, I tried to find people I wasn't actually very comfortable with. And this was very beneficial in one way, because I was getting used to the feeling of being nervous. So I was trying to not get judged, or I would feel nervous talking. This allowed me to get used to that feeling. So in the day of the interview, I wasn't as nervous and I could work through it effectively. Another thing I did was I also went through and I Googled every panel question that you could find from both medical school and veterinary school. And I tried to answer as many as I could, just in case, because I wasn't sure what kind of questions were going to be asked. So I had those in the back of my mind. Another thing that I did that was quite helpful actually was I recorded myself too. So I would sit in front of my computer for an hour or two every night and just practice answering those questions and play back and watch myself. It was a little bit awkward at first, but I was able to see that I have a bad habit of saying and like a lot, and I was able to change that so I could come across a little bit more professional in the interview. Overall, it was a good experience preparing for it, and it was really, I feel, beneficial for my future professional life. And I learned some awesome kind of techniques and some really cool things about myself. And yeah, so if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was really, really informative, and we really appreciate that. Could we get going with Maria?
Internet. Hello? Can you guys hear and see me?
All good.
Yes, I can see you.
Well, it's my phone. My computer was being funky. So I also did the CASPer and the virtual panel interview that Sarah was discussing. I actually prepped quite differently than Sarah, in the fact that while we only had 3 weeks, I was working full time, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So a little bit more different in the time allotted I could dedicate to that. So my biggest thing was that although they say your typing speed doesn't need to be good, mine was at 25 words per minute because I just never typed anything. So I worked really hard at that to increase that, because I knew the more thoughts I could get down on paper, the better I would feel about myself. I was comfortable in my critical thinking skills. I was comfortable in my ability to answer questions and work through ethically challenging situations, as I had prepped for the MMI years in advance and reading all the fun ethical books and stuff. So I thought as though if I can get as much down, that means I can do better. So I worked taking practice typing tests and stuff, and I actually was able to increase my words per minute to 85 words per minute consistently over a 5-minute span and improve my accuracy to 98%. So that really helped me get as many thoughts down as possible. Like Sarah, when I did not do a practice or a CASPer test course, a prep course by no means, but what I did was I took the one practice version they give you when you sign up, and I said, okay, where was my weak spots? Was it my typing speed? Was it my personal thoughts? Was it personal stories? So I found it was personal stories. And like Sarah, I went through and I said, okay, there's 9 characteristics. When did I show these? Okay, what's it? And just general ones that they would ask you in interviews. So times I had issues with the boss, I talked about. None of them really came through in the CASPer, but it was super helpful for me to prep and think of scenarios and think of different examples and jobs. How I felt after the CASPer, I felt fine. There was some questions that I had answered differently than my friends who had also done it, but I felt very confident in my answers. I felt as though I was showing characteristics that showed myself. And really, I think a big thing of it is having your core values. What are your core values? You know, there's certain ones that they test for and they're publicly available on the website. Me repeating them isn't going to help or not help you, but you know, what do I believe and why do I believe that? And are you able to justify that and explain that? So that's something I really honed in on. What was I less confident about? I was less confident about the virtual interview after having done it, just because I felt as though, oh my God, I have rambled. I must have not have done as well as I thought. But coming out of it, I guess it went well. I'm in vet school. I was a high scorer. Can't really complain. I will say, though, when I found out we were going to be writing the CASPer test, I cried. I cried for a solid hour. I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to get into vet school. I'm such a slow typer. But then I sat down and I was like, hey, I don't have a choice. Like, yes, I could defer my interview, but no, this is what I want to do. I have to try. So I sat down and I did it and it worked out. So anything's possible. I had 3 weeks and I did it, which means anyone can do it. So fun stuff. For the virtual interview, I wrote a list out of questions I thought they were going to ask me. And at the end of the day, it's only asking you about yourself. If you didn't lie on your biff, which you should not be doing, only write about yourself, then you should know all the answers to all the questions. It's about you. So I went over all my experiences. What did I learn? What helped me? What didn't help me? What type of vet do I want to be and why? And what experiences showed that? So I really just went through that and yeah, came out well. So that's all I have really to say.
Thank you so much, Maria. It's really nice to hear everyone's different experiences, and it's interesting that you guys both did quite different things and got to kind of the same place. So that's cool. Annie, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you. I find it funny listening to you girls talk about this because I sort of had the complete intermediate process between the two of you. So based on what Sarah said, I used a lot of the same sort of strategies. The first one was picking those characteristics that the CASPer was looking for or the MMI was looking for. So communication, empathy, integrity, things like that. And I just put little blurbs about when I had done that or, you know, times I've struggled or things like that. And it just kind of helps that, especially in a 5-minute time frame, you just have this story ready in the back of your head. That's something you've reviewed. So just to start with the CASPer in particular, I guess rewinding a little bit, I think I actually prepared probably a bit less than the average person for the MMI sense of things. I know a lot of people do really look at that stuff for many years, and I had skimmed over it and kind of briefly looked at things and practiced things, but I never was able to attend or anything like that. So maybe kind of was in my benefit that everyone had 3 weeks, and maybe that kind of gave me a bit of an advantage, to be honest. So with the CASPer, I was incredibly nervous for the CASPer and the interview. After the CASPer writing it, I felt completely indifferent. I'm like, I could completely fail or I could do well. I really have no idea. I practiced my typing speed, although mine wasn't too poor. So this was just something I touched on. I did like last minute, one of my friends that I knew did a course, and I was like, you know what, might as well pay for it and do it. It's not going to hurt. They really say you don't have to study for the CASPer, but I don't know that it's about studying for what you're going to say. More so is being comfortable in that situation. If you just went into it and you have 5 minutes and you've never looked at it, you're going to be very fumbled. You're not going to finish what you're saying. So it's really just being comfortable with that format, you know, getting used to what you want to say and the order of the questions you're looking at. Like, make your own strategy for what works. I don't have too much to say about the CASPer. Just based on how it went, I would assume that I did a bit better on the panel interview part than the CASPer. That would have just been my guess. So for the interview part of it, it was definitely a little bit of a different style than normal. So first strategy I did for that was break down my BIF into different experiences that I had had. So almost like looking at a resume, and I wrote out like a paragraph or so about what had I learned from this experience, you know, how did I get into it? How does this relate to veterinary medicine, and really what I took from it, and, you know, why I appreciated that experience. And I wrote it out in a really formulated paragraph, and I would read those paragraphs, you know, once or twice a week. Same thing, I was working full time or overtime. So I tried to set like 2 blocks at least aside a week. And I probably did that for the 3 weeks. But before that, at least probably 2 months before is when I really studied quite a bit. And it wasn't necessarily to memorize it. I just got to a point I didn't have to look at it off of a paper. And there were certain sentences, if I fumbled with, I would be like, okay, I know what to say. And I just had those main points that I really wanted to get across. So I found that really, really useful for me, is just getting comfortable with really what I wanted to say and what I learned. My other thing was I had a friend that I studied with, and we set aside 2 times a week. He was completely the opposite of me. He was completely analytical and very scientific to like an algorithm on what you have to do, where I'm just a lot more practical and kind of speak freely. So I found it was really beneficial for me because we balanced each other out. We took pages from each other's books. So I would highly recommend that, is just comparing with someone that's different from you, because you're going to see different things than they're able to see. Or, you know, even with a variety of people, practicing would definitely be helpful. After the interview, after the CASPer, like I said, I honestly felt very indifferent. After the interview, I thought I did well. One thing that I would kind of like to pass along is, after talking to people that had done it, everyone's like, I think I did really well. Which, not that that's discouraging, but it's like, okay, everybody did well. Like, there's going to be a lot of competition. And just, again, listening to my friend talk, it's like, okay, he has an exact algorithm of what was said to come up with this correct answer. And after hearing that, I'm like, okay, I think I missed something in the question. I was probably rambling about, you know what I mean, how I felt about this given scenario. So I really felt like I missed the point, and that I missed the right answer. And I think, from being told I'm a high achiever, like, my best recommendation is just that there really isn't a right answer for those type of questions that are about yourself. I think the thing I felt the best about was how I came across, and how passionately I am, and how badly I wanted to do this, and you know, what things meant to me. So I think it's really came down to who you are as a person, rather than there being the exact right thing you have to say. So I guess my advice for that is, just, again, kind of what they were saying, is dealing with stressful situations. I worked as a server for many years, so just being comfortable talking to people, put yourself in uncomfortable situations so you get better at dealing with that. Or if you deal well under stress, that's definitely a benefit. I was very, very stressed out for both of them. But yeah, I would say that's sort of how it went for me.
Thank you so much, Annie. And I just wanted to say congratulations yet again to Sarah, Mary, and Annie for getting into vet school. And that's an amazing achievement. And also, you guys gave amazing answers. And I really feel like it'll be helpful for our members, and just members in general, in the future. So I just wanted to say thank you yet again. All right. So I think now we'll move on to the MMI achievers. Could we start with Camille?
Yep, sounds good. All right, hi guys. So basically, to start off with the strategies that I used to prepare for the interview, I started off by reading the Rollins book, Veterinary Medical Ethics, that you guys are probably well aware of. And I probably started reading that in November. And then I would do it kind of in between my coursework, doing a little bit of cases here and there so it wasn't too overwhelming. And then by the end of Christmas break, I ended up reading the whole book. And then come kind of like reading week, I ended up actually working through cases on my own. And what I use, and I found that really helped me a lot, is writing down my answers as opposed to just like thinking about it in your head. So I thought that was really helpful because I'm the kind of person that needs to organize my thoughts first before I start speaking. So I have to kind of write down my like main notes that I want to talk about, whether that's structure or that's just, there's something that you can always relate any case to. That'll include in all of my answers. So I started doing that, and I had pages and pages of stuff that I had written down. And I started to kind of notice that there was a trend to some of these ethical based scenarios. And I used that to my advantage in creating a structure that helped me evaluate other cases. So once I started getting a little bit more comfortable with writing out the cases, I began saying them out loud and timing myself. So I'm not sure how the interviews will be like for you guys next year, but timing yourself I thought was really important because you want to make sure that you stay on track and you're saying everything you need to say within the allotted time. So let's see what I'm just looking at the questions. How did I feel after the interview? I felt actually really good after the interview. I was really nervous at the first station, and I feel like most people would probably feel that same way. And then as I progressed through the 7 other stations, I felt like adrenaline kind of kicked in, and it was just kind of like, all right, it's go time. So it was a little bit of a weird feeling, but once you get into the groove of things, it becomes a lot easier. And what aspect of the interview? So I think I was more confident about talking about ethical based scenarios than I was talking about myself for the BIF station. And I feel like that might be common amongst other people as well. Usually it's a little harder to talk about ourselves. And it's like, what do you say? So I guess for that, what I have to say is write down what you've learned from each experience, even if it's, a few hours volunteering at I don't know, like a classroom with kids or something like that, like something completely irrelevant to veterinary medicine that you would think would be irrelevant. But then if you actually think about it, there's a lot of skills that you can learn outside of clinical based or vet med skills that can be very helpful for you during your interview and basically throughout your life. So going off of that, I think something that I felt, a little bit more confident about was the ethical based ones. And that's because I went over a lot of those through the vet med book and also some cases I found online. So I would just do a few of those a week. And that's how I became more confident with them. Some advice I would give to my past self would probably be to worry less. So I know that kind of sounds crazy, but looking back at where I was 2 years ago, I'm just kind of like, there's no need to be so stressed out about it. It's going to be scary regardless, and that's okay. And everyone's in the same boat. Everyone's been through this, so there's a lot of people out there you can talk to upper year students. Any of us would be, willing to help you, even just hear out some of your responses to your ethical based questions or your BIF. So don't take it like it's the end of the world if you think that you didn't do as good as you wanted to do on your interview. I think at the end of the day, you just have to try your hardest, and that's all we can ask of all of us. So yeah, basically the amount of time I spent preparing, I guess it was kind of since like December from the year before that I started preparing. I know it kind of seems like a lengthy amount of time, but I kind of started like instead of doing so much in the 3 weeks, I just kind of was like, well, I want to have a solid foundation from the get-go, so it's a little bit easier for me when we get down to crunch time. Trying to think of any other pieces of advice I have for you guys. I think it's important for you to practice in front of people, and practice in front of people that you're also comfortable with, because it's sometimes even more challenging than it is to practice in front of people that you're not as comfortable with. At least that's what I found. So that's kind of like trying to remain professional and serious when you're talking to like a family member, as opposed to talking to an upper year student or talking to, a friend that you just met or whatnot. So that was a little bit more challenging for me. And yeah, I think that's about it. And let me know if you guys have any questions you want to ask me.
Thank you so much, Camille. That was really informative. And then I want to go over to Keisha, but really quick, Elizabeth, I see that you have your hand up. Do you have something to add really quick?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that for the scenarios in the MMI, they're not all about ethics. Like each one tests for a different characteristic. Ethics is in there, ethical reasoning, but there are others. So just be aware that you don't assume going into an MMI scenario that they're asking you about ethics for each one.
Thank you for adding that, Elizabeth. Keisha, do you want to take it away?
Yeah. So for me, I actually interviewed twice. So the first time I interviewed, I kind of had like no clinical experience. I just kind of fully read Roland's and MMI for the mind. I did all right. I didn't do very much practicing, and then that was kind of it. And then afterwards, I actually didn't end up going back to school. I just worked. And so when I did my interview the second time, I didn't actually bother reviewing Roland's, but I would suggest it. It was really good. I think I just retained a lot of it from when I read it the first time. I just read MMI for the mind, and then also I practiced in the mirror, different scenarios about a week before the exam or the MMI. I also recorded myself and watched that back. It's really cringy, but it's so important to do. You definitely get to see your facial expressions. I'm someone who talks really fast, and you don't realize it until you see yourself doing it. But I think the main thing for me my second time around was that instead of going back to school and doing a lot of the reading and kind of all that, I just threw myself into clinical experience. So I ended up getting a position where I was like tethered to a vet, and I was with the client and the patient and the vet from the moment they walked in the door till the moment they left. And then I also worked at the Humane Society in the public spay and neuter clinic. So I think those experiences like really let me meet people from different like cultural, socioeconomic, like religious, ethnic backgrounds. And with that, I just really like everyone has different views on animal care and how they approach and manage their animals. And I just think being confronted with those head on really helped me navigate how you respond to those scenarios because everything is so different. So I think the working experience and just getting comfortable talking to people and confronting uncomfortable situations, especially that you don't agree with or that you might find questionable, is really important. And even if you can't do that like on hand, even just like shadowing a doctor or like just watching them and how they talk to clients and conduct those scenarios is really, I found very important. What strategies I used during the interview? For me, I thought organizing my thoughts was really important. So about a week before the interview, I ended up coming up with like an answer or structure style. And it doesn't have to be a specific one. Like when you read books, they'll tell you, oh, this is how you should give your answer. Just go like with whatever flows. Like whatever you find the easiest way to give an answer is the best way you should stick with, and just like repeat that over and over. And trying not to fill time with words. Silence is okay. So for me, I had to practice not talking and just like sitting in silence. And sometimes they'll try and make you uncomfortable. Sometimes they won't. But just don't try and add words in to fill time. I think that's a big one. Sometimes you think your answer is not sufficient enough and you're just thinking like, what can I add? What can I add? But sometimes what you have is sufficient. If you're comfortable with it, then just go with that. After the interview was over, I'd say the first interview I did, I was like, had like armpit sweat, like took off my blazer. I was like, oh, thank God I wore it. Like I was really stressed. I think after my second interview, I wasn't as stressed. I had a backup program kind of ready to go. So when I went into that interview, I also didn't really have that immediate stress of like, if this doesn't work out, like, what am I going to do? I kind of already had that lined up, and I didn't that first time. And I think that put a lot of pressure on me to do well in the interview, and I didn't. And then I think I was really confident about like the intrapersonal conflict questions and like social ethics. But for me, I don't have an agricultural background, and the school I went to didn't have an emphasis on agriculture. So I like reading the Rollins book the first time was really helpful for me because I knew nothing about pigs, horses, cows. So I'm still learning about them now. So I think whatever part of medicine you're not comfortable with, like if it's research or whatever, just try and like get comfortable about those types of medicine because it's not all off the table. Like kind of any part that a veterinarian could be employed in or kind of questions they could center those around. Sorry, I'm just looking at the questions. And like interviewees this year, mostly because of like my clinical experience like prior to interviewing just made me really comfortable with just talking about a point that I feel strongly about, but also understanding other people's perspectives and why they're coming from that point of view, whether for any of the questions. So, and also I had a backup program, not that like you have to, but I think for me that took a lot of the pressure off. So whether if you can just like get in a good headspace where you don't feel that immense pressure on you to do well in the interview, I think that can really help you succeed. And advice I would give to my past self. I think it would be a lot less reading and a lot more practicing. So like Camille was saying, like talking to people you're comfortable with or even like people you're uncomfortable with. Getting a job that maybe requires you to talk to people more. I know we love to be in the back with animals, but sometimes just confronting yourself and being upfront with people. Reception is a hard job. So things like that. Yeah, so I think those would kind of be my tips. Try to find some way to get that stress off you. It is really hard because a lot is riding on that interview, but any way that you can, even if it's like meditation or the day before like your exam, just taking a U or your MMI, taking a U day or going skiing or whatever you do. It won't be winter, so don't go skiing, but yeah, I think those would be my things. Practice a lot, record yourself, be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Wow, thank you, Keisha. That was really informative, and I really appreciated that. If I'm not mistaken, I think we've done all the vet students. Okay, so how the questions will work, let's try it. That we'll ask in the chat, and then Tula and I can say the questions to the vet students. Again, I just wanted to thank all the vet students for coming out here. We really appreciate everyone giving us their time, and I know you guys don't have a lot of time to give, so again, thank you for coming here. We all really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much. And I know someone might have to go. If you do ever like have to go, you can just turn off your camera, mic, say a quick bye or not, doesn't really matter, and head out. So if anyone has any questions, yeah, just feel free to type them in the chat.
Tula, I had asked a question to Sarah. So you mentioned you did some. Did you pay for the practice? And if you did, what company or agency did you use?
Yeah, so I did. Unfortunately, like those programs, they were really beneficial, but they really are pricey, which is very unfortunate. I did it through Astroff. There was another one through BMO. That one is significantly more expensive. I also had the BMO book, which was a good alternative to not doing the program because it went into some good details on that. But I would recommend, like the program for me, I felt was very beneficial, but if it's not something you wanted to do, you can find a bunch of free tests online that BMO and Astroff and other companies offer. And those would be a good kind of make up for not doing it. But yeah, I found it was very helpful for me.
So for the CASPer vet students, did you read the Rollins book? And if you did you find that it was helpful for the CASPer format?
I can personally say that I didn't. I did not. The CASPer isn't a veterinary-based test. It is a general medical sciences-based test, so there are not veterinary-specific questions like you would see in the MMI. However, I did a bunch of mock MMIs, so prior to that, I hadn't read the Rollins book, but I had read CVMA, AVMA, CVO position statements on a lot of controversial things, so horse meat, declawing, tail docking, teeth clippings, along with I have a pretty strong background in agriculture. It's something I'm really passionate about. So seeing it and understanding it in different perspectives, like Keisha mentioned, is really helpful. So while I personally didn't do it for the CASPer, I do think that having that knowledge there doesn't hinder you.
Thank you, Maria.
Sorry, just to add to that as well, I did read that book. I wouldn't say that the questions would help you with the CASPer, as in like if they're too similar. But it's just sort of the train of thought, I guess. Because for me, like I said, I didn't do the mock MMIs, or I hadn't been studying for that for a long time. So for Maria, probably for years, like had a really good knowledge, but for myself to review that before I started intensely studying, I found it just kind of helped me think more in a context of how to answer ethical questions. So it kind of depends how much practice that you had. And just to the previous question as well, as far as the things you can purchase for the CASPer test, there's different options you can do under a website. If you do like the full-blown course and test, it's like some of them are like $500 plus. It's really expensive, but I think I paid $50. Like they have different portions that you can access for different prices. So if you're like, I don't want to spend $500 and do like this full-fledged website, there's certain things you can do within the website that are a bit cheaper. And I think I did Astroff as well.
I'm just going to add on to that really, really quick because I didn't pay for anything. I found everything on Reddit for free.
Reddit comes in clutch.
So that's a good one. And honestly, YouTube videos, because some of your CASPer scenarios will be videos. It won't be written out for you. So I just like Googled CASPer YouTube video examples and like just to see. None of them were the same, but.
Thank you, guys. Does anyone have anything else to add on that question?
No? All right.
I want to add something just quickly if you don't mind. Another thing, since it's like Maria said, it's like biomedical kind of questions for the CASPer, I went and looked up ethical scenarios for doctors as well. So going over like confidentiality issues and like hospital dynamic. And I found that to be very beneficial. So something to go over as well if you're doing the CASPer.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so if anyone else doesn't want to add on, we can go into the next question. Are there any specific questions that you remember from your interviews that challenged or stumped you?
Yeah, I've already answered that no, because those are confidential, so they can't really say what actual questions were.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for correcting me. Okay.
So I have a general statement, I guess, about that is I found that the question, because some of them, they're not necessarily, they don't have to be medical related. They're about common, and you can go through the practice questions too. Like they're about common day issues, with conflicts with friends or conflicts you run into in your life. They don't even have to be medical based questions. So run through just scenarios like that on what you would do. And I think it's the ones that threw me off guard the most, again, are the ones that are completely not medical, just kind of catch you off guard with why might they ask that. So just think in a variety of range of questions, not just like medical and veterinary.
Thank you, Annie. I think that was definitely a good way to kind of get around that and answer a little bit like the types, because that's important. So another question that came up in the chat is for the CASPer, does it give you a restriction on how much you can write to answer a question? What did you do to make yourself feel a little less nervous before the interview? Within your year, do you feel as though a majority of people got in on their first try or were required to apply more than once? Just curious as a student who's applied more than once. Thanks in advance to all the vet students, and I hope to be in your shoes one day.
I think maybe we should talk about what the CASPer is, because people aren't aware. Do one of you want to do that? Maria, did you want to just talk about how it is and what exactly the timing is?
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead.
The CASPer is a 12 questions ethical test. So pretty much what they're going to do is they're going to give you 6 and 6, and it's a random order, and everyone in our cohort saw the same 12 question scenarios, and they're divided up. So you say you can expect 3 to 4 of the questions / scenarios to be on your personal experience. Explain a time when you blank. Explain this blank. An example of blank. That's not giving away anything. That's literally on the website. I have not told you nothing confidential. So you have 5 minutes to answer each of your scenarios. 8 of them are ethical based. They're not just testing ethics, they're testing those 9 characteristics, which Annie went over. Again, they're on the website. Equity, empathy, communication, critical thinking, collaboration, all that fun stuff. And you get a 10-minute break in between your stations. You can leave the room, take a break. It's a lot like Respondus, if any of you have used Respondus, where they are monitoring your mic and your camera. And you can't really cheat. Like, there's no point of cheating. What are you gonna do? So that's interesting. And then, yeah, so there's 3 questions for each scenario, and sometimes it's like they're very general. They're specific to each one, so it's hard to even give you guys an example of what they would be like. But yeah, so you have 5 minutes to answer 3 questions. You don't have to answer them all. You can answer them. You can answer 1. You can answer the bottom 2. You can answer the middle 1. You can answer all 3. But you should try to get something down. So even if I didn't have enough time to go over the 3rd question, which I frequently found myself, I would just write like, yes, no, this because of this. And it doesn't need to be a thorough explanation, but your thought and why. What else did I find? I found that it was very difficult to get everything I wanted to get down. So I had to think at the beginning of the question, what is most important to put on paper? And then how they score you is each person scores you at each station. So it's not one reviewer doing your whole test. So that's how they remove bias. So you have 12 reviewers reviewing your 12 stations, and they score you on a scale of 1 to 12, or they'll red flag you. So the whole idea is if you do really, really bad on one station, it doesn't really affect your score down the line. And then they add it all up, and red flags are sent to a review committee. And then at that point, they talk about if they think it's a red flag or not. And if you are indeed red flagged, it gets sent. If not, well, I think they remove it and they score you. So.
Just to add as well, that's awesome. So for the CASPer, it's really useful to look at the videos that they have that introduce you to the CASPer if that's what you have to write, because it like all that information, they tell you how they grade it. The other thing they say is that they don't base it on spelling or incomplete answers. So suppose you didn't have enough time and you didn't finish question 3 and you get cut off mid-sentence, you don't lose marks for that. It's more so if they're getting like the gist of your answer. So that definitely calmed me down, because typing and speed typing, I'm not the best speller. So I definitely found that helpful. The other thing to do for being cut off is the order of your answers, I found. Like I would answer the easiest one first, while almost not even thinking about it, while focusing on the hard one. So I'd already kind of started formulating an answer while I was typing one, just to kind of get as much down as I could. The one thing I really wanted to add on your question, I think it sounds like both these girls got in after 3 years, is that right, of your undergrad? So I was born in 1995, so that means I'm 3 years out of my undergrad. So it really is possible. Like I definitely wanted to tell that to all of you. So my first and second year, I did not have very good grades at all. I definitely wasn't focused on where I should be. And then after vet school, my undergrad, I decided to take some time and work in the industry and say, like, is this something I really want to do? So after working, I was not in practice for very long at all. I applied once and my average wasn't quite high enough and I didn't get an interview in my first attempt. So I actually decided the following year to go back for a semester, and I really focused on that semester. I knocked the semester out of the park. Just because I was really passionate about what I wanted to do, and I was going to do everything I could to get there. And it really is a gamble coming back and spending all that money to move back to Guelph to do one semester, but it's completely possible for the people that are a little bit discouraged and first time. And absolutely, a lot of people do not get in on the first try. So, really don't let that knock you down. Like definitely get back up and keep trying. I would say the fact I did it twice, the first time I spent so much time on my essay questions, like so much time on everything, that the second time I went through the process, like I just feel like I whipped through it. I knew exactly what to do. So I'm really happy I actually got the opportunity to apply twice. I'm even happier I had 3 years to work in practice. So it's helped me feel so much more prepared for being here. Like I've really solidified that this is what I wanted. So Katrina, definitely don't give up. I have hope.
Thank you, Annie. That was really inspirational, and I definitely agree. I think it's awesome that you did try twice and that you got in on the second try. And I really think that's something that not a lot of us realize, but it's really good to have someone tell it to us. So are there any more questions anyone has, or just anything the vet students want to add on at all?
Yeah, I was just going to add on, going off of that too. I wasn't someone that had, like mid 90 average or even low 90 average. I think my average was about like an 89 point something. So going into it, I wanted to do really well on my interview. So, having seen that the average keeps going up by like 2% every year, I know it can sound pretty discouraging. But I think what you guys can take from that is focusing on your interview skills if you know that you might not have like the most competitive average. Because for me, having that really high interview score is what basically set me apart from, the other candidates. And that was really helpful. And I think being able to get experience outside of veterinary medicine was really important for me. And I found that taking my head out of the books and going out to, like I used to be a server, so I had a lot of customer service experience that way. I also worked with children at one point, and I was a tutor. So just looking at things that you kind of would be interested in outside of vet med is really important, because I feel like it's important to have high grades, because yes, you will have a really high caseload, a high number of courses in your first year of vet school, which is going to be a very big change for a lot of you. But I think it's really important to get your head out of the book sometimes and go get different experiences, because they'll actually reward you in the long run, and you'll be able to pull from those experiences during your interview and develop your soft skills, which I think are honestly really important. So, and I think that's what sometimes people lose sight of that and just focus on their grades for, which are really important. But if you focus on them too much, you'll lose the importance of those soft skills, communication skills. And, you might end up, falling short on the other sector. So keeping that in mind when you're looking at your experiences moving forward.
Thank you, Camille. Does anyone else have anything to add to that? Go ahead. Yeah, obviously.
Okay, we
Yes,
can go
just
to the
try your best.
Oh, sorry.
Just like try your best. It's so hard. It's so stressful, but like just try your best. There's nothing more you can do. I promise you. Like I said, I got the email that I got an interview and I saw it was a CASPer and I cried. And I'm here. It's fine. I promise you it like if you have to apply twice, you have to apply twice. If you have to do your grades, you got to study and get your grades done, but all you can do is try your best. Just like remember that there's hard days, but like it doesn't last forever.
Amazing advice. Thank you. Okay, so not really an interview question, but how did everyone deal waiting for the news of getting accepted into vet school?
I can add on to this. Honestly, the way that I looked at my application this year that saved me a lot of stress was I kind of phrased this as like, I'm just going to apply and see what happens. I had a lot of backups in place. So I was like, if I don't get in, not a big deal. Like I have all of these other alternatives. So for me, that's how I just kept phrasing that over and over and over again, just saying, it's okay. It's not a big deal. I probably won't get in anyway. I'll just try again next year. I have all of these backups. I can do so many more things if I don't get in, and tried to look at the positives of not getting in, which is extremely difficult. I also just tried to distract myself as much as I could. Like after the interview was over, I didn't think about it. It was over and it was done with. I just kept busy, stayed busy with my friends, worked. I tried to increase some volunteering. I did a lot of volunteering after my interview because I honestly thought I bombed the interview. So I thought I would need to do a lot more volunteering, so I kept busy that way. But yeah, it's a hard time waiting for the interview and then afterwards. It feels like it's years, but yeah.
Just something to add for me. I will say I was very stressed out, and I'm not usually a stressful person, but I didn't have any backups in place. And again, I like when you're in your third year, you're like, okay, well, you know, so many people apply twice, I'll apply in my fourth year, but it was already 3 years kind of out of school, right? So it definitely put a lot of stress on me for sure. But as soon as I finished those interviews, it was just such a weight off my shoulder that I couldn't even be stressed for like the results. I was just like, you know, I actually tried the very best that I could. And I just felt good knowing that it was, you know what I mean? It was done and behind me. And kind of at that point, there's nothing else I can do.
Something to add off of that too is to maybe don't check WebAdvisor every single day or maybe every minute of the day. So a lot of you guys probably want to do that because you're anticipating, you know, your acceptance letter or, you know, denial. But for me, like I think what Annie said too, I worked and kind of kept myself distracted. But don't check every day, or at least, you know, keep it to once a day when you know it's a week that you're supposed to find out, because it'll eat you up. So you know, keep it to a minimum and just be like, I'll find out eventually. So regardless, I'm gonna know, and it's not gonna, you know, do me any good to keep checking. So I found that that was helpful to just turn off my phone notifications too and disconnect and only check like when I wanted to.
Thank you guys so much for adding that. Oh, sorry, no, go ahead.
I just did quite the opposite, and like definitely shouldn't have. My friend and I were both working from home, so we were checking like every 30 seconds. She found out at 11:09 in the morning, and I was like, mine still says pending. And then I checked 3 minutes later, and then I got accepted. And I was like, oh my God, worst 3 minutes of my life. So don't do that. If you can avoid checking, avoid checking. Worst thing, like our whole friend group was like, did you check? Did you check? What was it? Did you check? Did you check? And it was like, stop. We needed to stop doing that. Don't do that.
Yeah, I imagine that would be pretty difficult not to do. Definitely that type of person as well. But I think that's good advice. Did they give you guys a date like that you would for sure hear back by and you guys were just checking it, or was it just like at some point? The latter.
It was at some point. We knew kind of what
they give
week,
us a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll usually tell you what week you should expect it to come out, but it will come out eventually. So, you know, don't be upset if it's not the week that you expected it to be. They'll usually let you know just around the week.
All right. So another question kind of along the similar lines. What did everyone do to make yourselves feel less nervous right before the interview? Any specific tips on something you did?
So I listened to my favorite song before my interview. So for us, we were in McKinnon, which is a building on the campus of University of Guelph. So we weren't allowed to arrive earlier than the interview time. So I was on the first floor, and I got there like maybe 10 minutes before my interview, and I spent the hour prior to that in the library. So I don't know what the logistics will be this year, but that's what I did. And when I got to McKinnon, I just had my headphones and just put my headphones in, like didn't talk to anybody, listened to my favorite music. And then when it was like 2 minutes to time, I turned it off and took a really big, deep breath and was like, all right, I got this. So and went upstairs, and then everything began. So it's kind of what works for you. Some people don't want to listen to music. Some people like to talk to people. So it really depends. But anything that will make you feel better, that you're comfortable with, definitely bring that along to your interview. Because you do, if you have it in person, you do have a spot to put your bag.
For myself, again, it was a little bit different. So it's a little unconventional, but it was all online. So I was like, okay, I'm going to look as pretty as I can. I'm going to act like this is a night that I'm going out with my friends. I like curled my hair. I blasted party music and I just pretended like, you know what I mean? I was going to go out and have like the best night. I didn't look at anything the day of. I slept in that day. I still was completely stressed out. So, you know, definitely try and follow some of these tips. But like I just tried to get myself into the mind space that like I was, you know, gonna go and have fun. Like I'm really big on music as well. That definitely changes my mood. So yeah, I just, you know, focused on like curling my hair, like, you know what I mean? And just tried to feel good about myself, really. Just tried to build my own confidence and be as confident as I can going into it.
I can add to that too. I'm naturally an extremely stressed out person, and I can get in my head a lot. So I knew that I had to do some drastic changes before, since this is a pretty big interview for me. So leading up to 2 weeks before, cheesy as it sounds, actually started practicing meditating, and just practicing like breathing techniques. It takes a bit to get used to, so that's why I started a bit earlier. But then the day of, the half an hour before, I just sat and kind of worked through those breathing techniques, and it actually made a huge difference in my stress level, and I felt quite calm going into it. So that was something, even though I know it sounds cheesy meditating, but it was actually really effective for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really like what like everyone had to add. It was all kind of different. Annie, I liked your strategy. That's definitely something that I feel like you wouldn't think about, but makes sense. And I think there's studies on meditating actually, and like how that helps your stress levels, like it actually does. So that makes a lot of sense. And I think this will be our last question for tonight because we only have like 4-ish minutes left. When you were applying, did you feel confident in your application even before the interview, or were you worried because of how competitive the process was?
I'm going to start by saying, while I felt very confident in my application, because I was only in third year and I didn't know what the cohort looked like, I was naturally nervous. I applied with quite a high average. I had studied for it. I had known I wanted to go to vet school from the day I stepped foot on U of G's campus. So that was always a goal I worked towards and worked really hard for. But at the end of the day, you always hear stories about kids who didn't get in or suddenly didn't get an interview. So while I felt very confident in my application, and I think it was reassuring to have a good support group of friends applying with me, which can or cannot be helpful. So in my case, it was super helpful. My friends and I all applied. We kept reassuring each other. We have good averages. We have lots of experience. We're practicing our interviews together. We're going to get through this. Like there's no other options. We're going to get through it and we're going to do our best. So I did feel quite confident in my application. I don't think anyone ever says like, oh, I'm for sure getting in, because you can't. That's just so scary to even say, oh, I'm for sure getting in. But I felt quite confident. I think I also felt confident because my advisors and my mentors and the vets I had worked with were confident in me. So it was like, okay, if people in the industry who have been through this are saying, no, you're going to do well, you're doing great so far, then I shouldn't believe any differently.
Just to add to that, I was the complete opposite. I felt like my application was very mediocre, my interview was very mediocre, and I afterwards did not feel great about it. It's very competitive getting in, and everyone kind of seems to have better experience or better grades or better preparation, and it's really hard to not compare yourself to them. But it's just important to just kind of look at what you need to do, look at what is required, and try and find things that are in your interest, which will allow your kind of passions to show through. But overall, yeah, it's a difficult process, but worth it in the end.
Just to add, I feel very similar to Sarah as well. I had a few years off to add experience to my resume, so that definitely made me feel a lot better because I had that down. But just kind of related to what Nathan's saying here about research too is you don't need to have everything. You do want to have a diverse range. Like I worked at a farm to get more like cow and chicken and all that. And then, you know, I had small animal. You do need a range, but you don't necessarily, like I had no research experience at all when I applied. So as long as you have a range, like you don't necessarily need everything. And again, I did feel good coming out of my interview, but then I was like, okay, everyone else felt really good. So again, it's really easy to compare yourself to other people. But again, I really knew that I did the best I can. So I just kind of ended up staying neutral. And I was kind of just on the fence, like, okay, at this point I've done what I can. So it's kind of just good to stay positive.
Does anyone else have any last thoughts on that? All right, well, thank you guys all so much for coming, and congratulations again on doing so well in those interviews. Like, I hope you guys feel proud of yourselves because you definitely deserve to. And I'm sure everyone really appreciates this. So this recording will be up on our Future Vets Club YouTube. If you just type in Future Vets Club into YouTube, you will find it. For anyone who wants to go back and rewatch some of the things. So thank you again, and everyone have a great night. Bye.
Have a great night, everyone. Thank you for giving us your really valuable time. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. I appreciate being here.
It was so sweet back. I loved FVC in my undergrad, so it's so nice to be able to be on the other side, and can't wait to sit and watch you guys when eventually we can be back in person with you guys.
Same here.
Same. Yeah.
Bye.
Good luck with
Have a nice night, everyone.
it.